皆さん、こんにちは. I'd like to start out today by going over the rest of the new kanji from this chapter. Some of them might be a little bit more complicated than some of the kanji that we looked at in the previous video, but none of them are going to be harder than the yo from nichiyobi, getsuyobi. So now that you know that one, everything else will be a little bit easier. Let's take a look at our first kanji. This one is pretty simple. So this one, the reading is hon. So this is hon as in like a book, and it's also the hon in nihon. So this hon can mean like a book or something, but the original meaning is like the root or the origin of something. So you might have heard the expression like the land of the rising sun before to talk about Japan. This hon together with the nichiyobi no nichi, contains that meaning. So the nichiyobi no nichi meaning sun, plus this hon meaning like the root or origin. So when you're in, old-timey China, Japan is east of you, right? It's the furthest east thing that you probably have ever heard about or have been to. So the sun, of course, rises in the east. So you could think of it as like the place where the sun comes from, the country off in the direction where the sun comes from. So that's where this Nihon kanji originates from. So as you can see, this kanji looks very similar to the mokuyobi no moku. Let's take a look at how we write it. We start by writing mokuyobi no moku. And then we have one last stroke at the bottom. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One last time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the hon in nihon, the hon that means book as well. Our next kanji is also very simple. So this has 2 readings that we're going to talk about right now. The first reading is jin. That's the jin in Nihonjin, or America jin, or Chugoku jin. It's the jin that means like a person from a place. The other one is hito. Hito is a reading that just means person. So it might be a little hard at first to imagine when you should use these different readings. This is something that we'll get more used to as we continue to study kanji, but this is part of the reason that we want you to learn kanji as words and not just as individual kanji by themselves. So this jin reading is one that we usually see when it's part of a longer word, like Nihonjin or America jin. The hito is the reading that we usually see when the kanji is all by itself. So if you see just the hito by itself with hiragana all around it, then it's probably the reading is hito. Whereas if you see it with like a country name in front of it, or with some other kanji combined with it, a lot of the time the reading is jin. Let's take a look. 1, 2. This kanji is very simple. 1, 2, 1, 2. The only thing I would keep in mind when you're writing it is that the second stroke starts at about the halfway point of the first stroke. So they don't come out of the same place. 1, 2. This is hito, or the jin from Nihonjin. Our next kanji is ima. So this is the ima from ima nanji desu ka? It has another reading, kon. This kon is one you have heard a little bit before in like kongetsu, konban, konshu. So it means this one. So kongetsu, this month. Konban, this evening. Konshu, this week. So we have the reading of ima, and that we usually see when this kanji is by itself, and the reading of kon, which we see when this kanji is combined with other kanji. Now, the thing about this kanji is that we have something else to keep track of. When you write this kanji together with the nichiyobi no nichi, that means day, the meaning is today. And our word for today is kyo. So when you see ima and nichi together, we actually read it kyo. That doesn't really come from the reading of either kanji. Basically, it comes from a situation where we already had a word for today when the Chinese characters came over to Japan, and so we just stuck the word for today that we have in Japanese onto the Chinese characters. So it is pronounced kyo. Let's take a look at how to write this kanji. The ima when it's by itself, or the kon in kongetsu. Ichi, ni, and then katakana da, ichi, ni. So ichi, ni, san, yon. Ichi, ni, san, yon. Ichi, ni, san, yon. This is ima by itself, the kon in kongetsu, or the first kanji of kyo. Our next kanji is one that we are mostly learning because it is a part of another kanji. So we are learning it as like a part, but it is also useful to know because this is a vocabulary word that we know. This is the tera in otera. Just like okane, otera has the o written in hiragana before the tera part. So o as a hiragana, and then this kanji is the tera. Let's take a look at how to write it. The stroke order, the way that it's drawn, is a little bit different from how you might be expecting. So let's take a look at it carefully together. So we start with like the doyobi no do at the top, and then we have the second part at the bottom. So the two vertical lines that are in this kanji, this second stroke, and this one with the hook are actually two separate strokes. So we start ichi, ni, san, yon, go, hook, roku, ichi, ni, san, yon, go, roku, ichi, ni, san, yon, go, hook, roku. This is the tera of otera. So something about this kanji that'll be useful for the next kanji is to know that the Japanese quote-unquote reading of it is tera, but the Chinese quote-unquote reading, the onyomi, is ji. So the reason that that is important is that we have another kanji that is read as ji, that is made up of the parts from this kanji. So this is a concept we will start discovering more and more as we learn to write more and more kanji. You probably have been taught before that kanji are like based on pictures, right? And that's kind of true, but you can't draw a picture of like every single concept in a language, right? Eventually, like you'll run into something that you cannot convey in pictures. And so actually, a huge portion of the kanji that we use are based on a system where one part of the kanji gives us a hint about the sound, and the other part of the kanji gives us a hint about the meaning. So this is one of those kanji. So we have a part that tells us about the sound, and that's this otera part, where one of the readings was ji. And we have a part that gives us a hint about the meaning, and that is the nichiyoubi no nichi that we have on the left side. That tells us that we're talking about time because, people used to measure the time of day by the sun. So we draw the time of the sun to show that we're talking about time in some way. And then we have the otera, which has the other reading of ji, to show us that that the reading of this kanji is ji. So this is the ji that we use to tell time, the ichiji, niji, sanji, yoji, that ji. It's also the ji in jikan, like ichijikan, nijikan that we talked about last chapter. And it's toki. So I think we talked a little bit in chapter 4 about kodomo no toki, at the time when I was a child. Or the first toki in tokidoki is this kanji. So let's take a look at how we can write it. We're going to start with nichiyoubi no nichi, and then otera on the other side. So first goes nichiyoubi no nichi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hook, 6. Putting them all together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, hook, 2. This is the ji in ichiji, also read toki. Our next kanji is the han that we use in ichiji han, niji han, sanji han. It can also be the first han, the first part of hanbun, which means half, a word that we'll talk about in just a minute. So this is the han that we use when we're telling the time, and we have like half an hour. So we start at the top with these 2 lines. We can imagine them being like cut right in half. So 1, 2, 3, 4, this is the longest one, and 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when you're writing this one, make sure that the first 2 strokes are pointing in the right direction. So they need to be pointing like inwards towards the point in the center. Okay. So this is the han in ichiji han. Our next kanji, once again, is one that we are going to learn because it is a part of another kanji. This is katana. So it means like a sword. So we are learning it because it's going to be a part of the next kanji that we talk about. When we write this, we want to have the first stroke with the hook, and then the second stroke, just be careful that it doesn't cross through the top. So it looks a lot like the katakana ka, but the second stroke should not cross through the top. Ichi, hook, ni. Ichi, hook, ni. Ichi, hook, ni. So once we have this kanji, we can use it to write this one. This is hoon or poon. So it has quite a lot of readings. And we will talk more about that in the future. Hoon goes with, for example, gohoon, 5 minutes, gohoon. Whereas poon is going to go with jippun, 10 minutes. And boon will go with hanboon, half. So it's a little tricky. That is something that we will work on as we continue to use this kanji. So just keep in mind that it can have a couple different readings. All of them similar. Basically the difference is whether there is like a 10-10 or a circle. So let's take a look. We write ichi, ni, san, hook, yon. Ichi, ni, san, hook, yon. Ichi, ni, san, hook, yon. This is the hoon in gohoon, the poon in jippun, and the boon in hanboon. All right, we are finally all done with the first set of kanji for with the set of kanji for this chapter. So keep practicing writing and reading the kanji. The more you practice both reading and writing, the easier it will be to retain the kanji long term.